Welcome to the Healing Collective podcast, where we explore the paradox of healing.
And we broadcast all of the healing codes to support a world of more heart-centered humans.
What's up, Jason?
Wow. Hey, Bethany.
I'm excited. I haven't talked to you in a little bit.
I agree. I don't remember the last time was.
Well,
can I start with like the serendipitous way that Jason and I kept connecting?
Yep.
And then maybe Jason, you could like share with the people who are going to listen to this one day, like how you know yourself and who you know yourself to be. But so, okay, the first time I was helping Jim with a forum in Chicago before COVID. And Jason and I think a friend or partner, someone, they were like both there together at the forum. And I just remember the two of them like stood out a lot because they were so connected to energy and movement. They kept bringing up Gay and Katie Hendricks, which is like always like something I wished I had, I've read the books, but like wanted to be in their presence. And I just was like, so that is the first time. Then I was doing this is like years later, at least 2 probably. I was doing info sessions for the conscious racist. And I don't even know how you got connected to that, but you came to the info session. I'm like, you look so familiar. You sound familiar. And then we made that connection. And then the third time I remember being connected is you reaching out to me. I didn't recognize who you were by your name, I don't think. And someone in our community had like linked you to me, and engaged you around maybe reaching out to me. And then we got on a call and I'm like, we keep meeting. And then we met in person. I honestly, like my honest opinion was like when we first met, I'm like, oh, he's not a fan. And then of me, like, he's not a fan, but I think I'm a fan. And then we met in person and it definitely felt like we connected a little on there. And then now I'm working with Jason and doing work with Jason, like really profound.
Oh my gosh. Tell me about this.
Body and like sexual work.
Okay.
I thought I told you like
you were going to or something, but I don't think I heard that it's happening.
Ever since I got this tattoo, one of the intentions that's really emerged is around sex magic and tantra.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like really strange because I'm not having sex. I feel the least connected to that ever in my whole life. So, but I know how the universe works, I know how life works. It's like, okay, well, this is what we're doing next. And none of my tattoos, I really knew what they meant when I got them. It'd be like a couple years later and I'm like, oh,
that's Emma.
Yeah. So I just started setting these intentions and like all these things arrived. And then Jason and I were talking and decided to do some trades and just also really, I felt really aligned to the way Jason talks about experiences, processes that particular work. And the number one thing is my body just feels so safe. And so I just feel like I can take risks because it's so vulnerable and it's unbelievable. Like when we have sessions, my body, I really experience myself as like really connected to my body, like 90%. But in our sessions, it shuts down. My breath shuts down. We go like this far and my body starts to do this like yawning thing. Like it's really so interesting how it feels like I'm like this available. And maybe like our last session, maybe I felt like this available. So anyways, we can talk more about that, but I'd love to just kind of bring Jason in the space and anything you want to say, but just let us know who you are.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, I'm Jason. I'm an artist and I paint and I make art and I coach and I take people on journeys with their bodies on occasion. I think the biggest thing about the work that I do is getting out of the way and being a channel for what wants to come through. Most of my life right now is arranged around being creative all the time, like unlimited creativity all the time. And the things I do in my life around flow and routine and creating and not creating and rest allows me to just show up. I spend a lot of time just preparing to show up. And then I wait for the time to show up, and I show up. And sometimes it's like meeting Lauren in Chicago, and now we're working together, and just showing up for whatever wants to come through. I found over and over and over that when I bring my agenda into what my life is going to be, it doesn't turn out quite as well as when I get out of my own way and just follow intuition and impulse. Mm. And somehow it's all working. I ate twice today, and I have an art studio here, and I just came back from 2 weeks in California, and I'm going to be back there in 3 weeks. And yes, it's all working, and I have no idea how.
Well, that's an invitation. That's a thing that happens where you don't plan everything and control for everything, and it just sort of arrives and comes through the way it's meant to. And the way I'm experiencing you right now is maybe a part of your persona that I don't know very well. Like Jason and I's connection is that he trained as a coach at Conscious Leadership Group, and we did that program. And I like the standout qualities of what I remember my experiences around you in the program was like really fucking playful.
Yeah.
And like just not opposed to giving some shit about something or just like poking or teasing somebody. And the biggest thing for me, the polarity that I'm the most attracted to and the most averse to, I think, in moments is like not making it a really big fucking deal. Because I do a lot of big deal-y kind of stuff and just in general intensity. So I saw you handle a program that for me was really intense and like serious a lot and even hard. Like it just seemed to just move right through you in a very easeful way, and that you were having a ball and giggling through a lot of it. And I noticed that about you.
I was having a ball and giggling. And that program was the most impactful year of my life, like through outward growth. It was a lot of fun. And there might be a persona here. Might be a little bit nervous.
Yeah, there's like a little quiet one.
A little quiet one. Yeah. Maybe I'll warm up in a few minutes.
It's like a NPR. It's a little bit like a.
Can we interview this one?
Oh, there's a Saturday Night Live skit where there's the NPR people that I think I'm embodying that right now.
Love it. And hold on though. And I want to say this because I feel like we haven't addressed this. So yes, playful, silly, easy breezy around massive transformation, high pressure year of a container around like getting trained as a 15 commitments coach. And then like brightly populated with the fact that he's a sex coach who occasionally would tie people up, like between sessions or something, like on lunch break, tie people up to let them experience that.
That's true too.
Yeah.
I have a lot of content like that. I think I'm kind of feeling out like how much to share and how much not to share. I've been told like, I need to work on seduction and not like everything all out there all at once. Maybe some of that's here too.
I see that.
Well, how does one become a sex coach?
Yeah, talk to us.
I can speak about how it was for me. For me, it was the universe kept pushing me in that direction. kept giving me signs that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like people kept coming to me, and they would say things like Lauren said earlier, I just feel so safe around you. I can share about you. I'm having conversations with you about intimate things and sex in my body that I haven't had with other people before. And sometimes just hanging out with me, they would like later report back like, hey, this was really important and transformational. And it's like, I didn't really do anything. I just kind of showed up and hung out. Last year, what?
Go ahead.
Last year I went to this Tantra training retreat for a week. And there at that training, I was like, okay, that was so much fun. Barbara Corrales ran it in New York. And the training was like, half of it was how to run your business. Like I would say like 75% of the people there were sex workers in some respect. They were either like sex therapists or massage therapists or pelvic floor physical therapists, escorts, dominatrix, a retired kindergarten teacher who gets women together and they pleasure themselves listening to music, laying on the floor in circles, like a whole range of folks. And half of the workshop was like how to run your business, how to like manifest, how to integrate a little bit of magic, how not to get arrested, how to work with insurance, how to get paid, where to advertise, all of these things. And the other half was like hands-on genital massage demonstrations and activities with your classmates.
Wow.
It was a lot of fun. And I left that like, oh wow, there's a whole world out there, and like seeing all the healing, and then relating that to all the healing that's happened in my own life, all the trauma and healing both has happened in my life in the world of eroticism and sex and touch, and having this opportunity, like just learning about all the work that's happening, seeing it firsthand, having big experiences happen in me firsthand, and then remembering it, and then coming back and like doing it with friends, and then clients, and just, wow, there's so much healing that's available through the lens of sex and touch and moving erotic energy around. And when I say sex, I'm not talking about like intercourse. I'm talking about just like sexual energy, moving sexual energy around in your body, maybe intercourse, maybe not. And then combined with like 3 years ago, I was in a pretty bad motorcycle accident that put me in the hospital for 18 days. And that was, people say like the universe first like speaks in a whisper, and then like and then more like vicious sorts of ways. This was kind of like the last whack. It was like half a second earlier, half a second later, I definitely would have been dead. The van that hit me would have won. And that changed the way my brain worked. It meant that the work I've been doing in technology for 20 years wasn't work that I could do anymore. And I noticed that that I just couldn't remember things. But whenever clients or my friends would talk about anything related to sex, I would remember all of the details. So I was like, okay, great. I'm going to coach people around sex. And I have a lot more, but I'm going to pause and see if you want to direct the conversation in any direction.
Were you ever coached around sex? Did you ever receive what it is you're doing?
Oh. No, not from like a professional sex coach or therapist. No. But I do have lovers, partners in my life who are that.
Mm-hmm. I notice I just trust you around it. I haven't really experienced you in that specific way, but like I would definitely say
I'm curious, like I'm sure this is very fluid and changes often, but like what do you know is true about the work you do? What do you know what are like the principles that you've learned?
It's all pretty simple. It's just breath. almost all the work, and the work I start with clients and the work I do with myself and when I get lost, is just breathing. There's a way to move energy around in my body that I've been doing for maybe, I don't know, 8 or 10 years. And it's opening myself to more energy, creative sexual energy, and moving it through my body, moving it different parts of my body, cultivating it, and also like moving it through other people's body. A lot of this is just some like basic tantric breathing, where you're just pulling energy up through your body and sending it down through your body, and then noticing what happens. And when I'm working with clients, we tend to just start with breath and just notice what happens. And there might be a snag in different centers of the body, and we'll follow that and see what's happening.
What's a snag?
Oh, a snag. Okay. So a snag would be like, you can just do this. And if you're listening at home, you can do this as well. You can close your eyes and just sit and notice your perineum, your root. It's that spot in between your genitals and your asshole, right there at the bottom. And just focus on that and just imagine like a little spot of light. And then in your mind's eye, like connect your root all the way up through your spinal column, up through your skull to your third eye. Maybe even put your finger or your thumb on your third eye, which is like maybe an inch or two above the middle of your eyebrows. Maybe just like tap that. And imagine drawing like a line between the two. It could be like a fishing line or fiber optic cable, spider web, whatever works for your imagination. Just something that's like transparent and carry light. When your next inhale comes around, just imagine inhaling that little spot of light up through your spine, all the way to your third eye, the spot on your forehead. And on the exhale, send it back down. And then do that just a couple times, inhaling up, exhaling down. If you can, do this through your nose. Really take your attention and just focus on the little light going up and down. Okay, that's the practice. And you might have noticed, like it might have just freely flowed up and down. Or it might have been coming, it might have felt like it got stuck or tangled or needed to take a detour or hit a wall at different spots in your channel. Those are the things that I might call snags, roadblocks, disconnections. Some people have a disconnection right between their head and their body and their throat area. Some
That's
people
what I had a snag in my throat. The first breath up, I had a snag in my throat. When I went down, there was no snag, and then when I came back, it came. I felt like it moved through, but the first time,
I love that. Yeah, and I find that the up and the down are often different. It's not the same map. And in my experience, I equate one to my willingness and ability to give, and the other one, my willingness and ability to receive.
coming down is receiving.
Let me check in because I'm a bit dyslexic and I forget. Up is give, cultivating that unlimited source of creativity located just below your root that connects all of us in that beautiful red, pinkish, glowy. That's how it is for me. Like opening up the tap and just letting the sexual creativity energy come up, and then I can go out or fill myself. Then I can do things with that magic. And the down is my willingness to receive from a partner, from the world, from the trees, from source. I noticed for years and years when I would have snags on inhale, and my whole entire body would start shaking. There'd be like a tremor. It was years and years and years. There was like this blockage around my second and third chakra, which over a period of like 6 months, I was able to heal using help of an acupuncturist and then some visualization and working it into my daily yoga practice. So there's a channel there, and there's snags, and there's, dragons and barricades and dead ends. And I believe everyone has the ability to heal that in themselves. And this is just one lens into this work. There are so many different ways that people work to heal, the ability to move energy through your body. And this is just one that works for me. And I get reports that also works for them.
A big part of, like kind of the way that we think about our podcast sometimes is like, what healed you? What got you to this point? Who were you before? And then like, what codes do you have now?
Mm-hmm.
What are you here to share with the world as a result of your healing? And then if we get to it, what do you believe about collective healing? So we kind of divided it up that way. Like, what got you here?
Yeah, what got me here? What got me here was a series of almost losing everything. There was a moment when I was moving cross country. Things had been really rough with my spouse, Lisa, and our child. We were living in California. We were moving back to our hometown in St. Louis. And long story short, they stayed in California. I drove back in the middle of Texas, lost. At that time, I was my life was like 10 hours at work doing computer stuff, and then like 3 or 4 hours playing video games, and like 1 or 2 hours looking at porn, and like 4 hours of sleep, 7 days a week. That was kind of my life. The math, if you're a math person, I might not have done the math right, but basically a lot of screen time, a lot of aloning, a lot of porn, a lot of addiction to video games, and that didn't really make my my marriage so great. And I'm in the middle of nowhere in East Texas, and I have driving my truck and has a CD player, and there's no radio stations, and I've already listened to like a book or two, and I pull out a disc that accidentally got mixed in with my stuff, and I put it in the disc thing anyway, and it's Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And I remember that this book was a book that Lisa liked because she'd given it to me twice, and twice I had thrown it away. I like opened it up, like this is some hippie bullshit talking about like butterflies and like transcendence and stuff in the opening, and just threw it away. Literally, I remember like sitting on the toilet once, picking it up, trying to read it, and I just so disgusted, I just like threw it in the corner where it stayed for a long time. But this time it's just the right time, and totally hit me like that momentary flash of enlightenment. Satori came, and everything kind of changed after that. I started seeing a therapist. I started meditation. I started spinal breathing pranayama, which is a version of what we just went through. Started going to Al-Anon, which I stayed in for 10 years. A lot of big changes started there. I'm still working in technology. If we go back even further, like 10 or 12 years before that, I had dropped out of art school for the third time and took a job in technology, making computer software. That's a thread that comes back, obviously, if you heard the opening where I'm an artist now. So how else I got here was Lisa and I ended up being back together, and then her addiction and mental illness got worse and worse and worse. It ended up her being a danger to me and our son, and her dying alone in an apartment, 100 pounds lighter than when she moved in, and next to a bottle of pills and a bottle of vodka. It's kind of this like slow, painful, drawn out suicide. So that kind of got me on my journey as well. And dealing with that, like that was a lot. It's amazing. There's so much drama and so many problems in my life, in so many ways. I wanted her to be different, and I wanted to be different, and wanted things to change. And the moment I learned that she died, none of that mattered. Our last fight didn't matter. Is she going to get sober? Didn't matter. Like all the interactions with the police and trashed hotel rooms and wrecked cars, and like none of that mattered anymore. And it's had this like huge opening, like 50% of my brain activity suddenly stopped. So 50% of my activity was spent on wondering, wanting, managing, longing, anger about her and her existence and us together and her as a parent. That was a pretty major one for me too. And in the grand scheme of things, an incredible gift. I think that she knew that she was giving Julian and I a gift by ending her life.
Mm.
And some people listening might think like, oh, that's really callous and horrible, but that's not how I experience it.
Can you say more about what was the gift?
The gift was stop. It was stop. We had been on a ride with ups and downs for 17 years, and neither one of us was going to get off. We would still be there today. My son's life would be very different, I make up. Living with a parent who was an active alcoholic and addict. My life would have been very different. I wouldn't have found the life I have now, for sure. Because at that point, that version of Jason didn't have the self-confidence or the courage to say stop, to stop, to get off the ride I was on of codependence and self-righteousness and sadness, depression, addiction, like all of that. And her death was a big stop. And then all of that open space. I mean, the first few months was kind of hard, and I had a lot of help to figure out how to, really be alone and really be a solo parent. But it allowed me all of this space to grow and heal, right? To heal from the tragedy of losing a spouse was something to heal, right? And in the process of grieving that and healing, I healed a lot of other parts of myself as well. It was a prescribed path, forced march sorts, to heal. And then all of a sudden, go ahead.
How old was your son?
He was around 8 or 9 years old. It's about a decade ago that happened.
Who has your son become as a result of being on that journey with you? That ride, I guess.
He went from being a kid who was kind of a year or two behind on emotional development and independence to pretty quickly slingshotting to be a hyper independent kid. He's both is like very independent, and knows what he wants and knows where he is in the world and has a view of the world, but he also has he's a bit callous, right? Like he's the Enneagram 5. Everyone follows Enneagram. It's one that's kind of like Dr. Spock, right? We have arguments about things like logic is the only thing that's worthwhile, and feelings don't actually exist. They're just like made up things by your brain, and anything that can't be documented in a medical journal is not real. You can't believe it. And he's a person who like only gets his news from like AP News and nowhere else because he doesn't want to like the influence. So he's a bit of a skeptic, but he's also very independent. Sometimes I think that he's pursuing a field. He's in college now. He's pursuing a field in psychology as a way to maybe understand what happened with his mom. I don't think he knows that, but as his dad, I think he is.
I sent Lauren, I'm sure he's going to learn. I'm sure he'll study Carl Jung, but I sent Lauren a tweet today, a Jung quote. It says, "Sensation tells us a thing is, thinking tells us what it wait, sorry. Thinking tells us what it is this thing is, and feeling tells us what this thing is to us. Sensation tells us a thing is, thinking tells us what it is this thing is, and feeling tells us what it is to us. I wonder if you would align with that.
You wonder if I would align?
No, your son, like a type 5.
Oh,
yeah, maybe the emotionality, the depth of impact of a thing might help us root to what it means for us in some way or something like that. But that's another way to think about feeling. That sounds kind of heady to me, but like makes some sense.
Yeah. I think that would work for him. Yeah. Are we still on are we still on the part of like where I've come from?
Yeah. You decide, are we?
Okay. There's a couple more. Another big one was as a solo parent, developing enough like self-worth and courage to book a 30-day stay at an ashram in India where I got yoga teacher certification. So left my kid in the States and like disappeared for a month when he was like 12. That one was pretty big. I used to have this thing. I started dating a bit after Lisa died, and sometimes I would leave him home alone. As you know, as kids get older, you leave them home alone or you don't. I would always run this sort of like mental gymnastic before I decided if I was going to go out and leave him or not. And it was, what would the headline read if the house burned down and he died? Read something like single dad at therapy while tragedy happens at home, or would it read something like deadbeat father with lover in hotel while child perishes unnecessarily? And a headline about like going to India for a month and leaving my child at home like wasn't really great, but I still went, and that was a hugely transformative experience for me as well, just turning everything off. And I guess the last one was that final big whack about 3.5 years ago of motorcycle versus van and 18 days in the hospital and learning to walk again and learning what my brain could do that it couldn't do before. And all the changes that came from that, like leaving that whole world. There wasn't a single point in those 18 days in the hospital I had the thought, I want to go back to my tech job and make more software and help the world be a better place through technology.
The Silicon Valley tagline didn't strike.
No. You said that the universe like knocked and then it like, like you were like, the universe knocks and then it gets louder and louder. Like what were the knocks and like what was the universe trying to tell you that had to come to that in your mind?
I mean, the knocks were the things I've like talked about so far. And maybe some other ones I don't remember right now. And the pushing me towards was going back to art, which was terrifying. So terrifying. For the better part of 20 years, I didn't make any art at all. I was even scared to do things like doodle on a Post-it in a meeting. I was terrified. I had a story. If I start making art again, I'll go insane, quit my job, turn my whole entire life upside down and ruin everything. And I've done some of that, but everything's not ruined.
So then you get the wake up call, you shift, like what? So then the next part would be like, what are the healing codes that you have to offer now because of all of those things?
Yeah. Number one is it is impossible to change someone else. Like, don't try. Like, don't waste your time and
why do
your
you
money
think
to
we
change
do
someone
though?
else.
Why do we try so hard?
I was there, right? Like I tried to like change Lisa so that she didn't drink and all of that, right? I tried everything. I'm a white man with a technology job and money and a house and cars, living in the most affluent nation on the country that I'm in the world that I'm aware of. And I tried hundreds of things and nothing worked. I'm highly resourceful. I was a professional problem solver and nothing worked. So if you have a thought, like, you will change it. And for me, I wanted to change her in part because I was deeply enmeshed in codependence, which for me shows up as I'm not okay unless you're okay. And if you're not okay, I'm not okay. And the only way for me to be okay is to make you okay. And I think that's why we do it.
But can we take a little tangent, little side bar?
Let's go. Take me.
Because one of the most things, when we met in person, we had a conversation about codependence. And
Which has been cited on this cast a couple of times, I think already, maybe.
Really?
I think so. I don't remember if it's when we're on the phone or when we're on the phone.
I don't think I would have said this just because of the context. It
wasn't specific around Jason. Anyway, go ahead. Let's talk about it.
But there was a code filled in for me because the way, I agree with everything you're saying, but the thing that this tape in my head is always I truly at my core, part of my kind of life code is life is for us, with us, and ahead of us. Everything that happens in life is for my highest self-expression. And that's a fractal of what's true collectively. And I'm going to overgeneralize and exaggerate, but everyone's codependent. And in fact, there are so few examples of not codependence. And if they are, they're moments or they're seasons. It's not like we have these really interdependent regular examples of, that we can even point to. And so I'm why is this why? There is something that the universe is wanting us to work out and we're not. And then when I go to the side of and again, overgeneralization, but it's love yourself, right? Focus on your own. I'm also we didn't come here to manifest in bodies and, have this experience to just have an individual experience. Is that important? Is that part of it? Yes. But there's something, and so, I don't know how much you want to share. It's your story to share, but you're aha. And some of the things that you became aware of around codependency, made so much sense to me. And in my own journey, what I could say is that once I got to the level of awareness that I had the tools very much, as because of conscious leadership and science of mind and all these different things, to realize I'm the creator of my reality and to take responsibility for what I was, creating in the world. Codependency led me to such an understanding of interdependence, such a deep journey around my own masculine and feminine energy. In some ways was an invitation to my own divine feminine that I did not have any examples of the fully embodied, what I would call erotic energy, and definitely not in a woman's body. And the version of it I saw in a man's body was very, and then I didn't know any other types of bodies. So that was those are my reference points, a very small, yeah, just a very small window. So anyways, because that was so profound for me, that conversation, I just want to take a little side trip and see what comes up.
Yeah, let's take it, and feel free to prod me and share any part of my story that you want. I might not remember everything we talked about. I do remember talking about interdependence was a big edge for me as opening up to that idea, having been so deep in codependence and then stepping away from it. and making it an enemy for so long caused me to think that I took a stance, deeply entrenched, self-righteous stance, that interdependence was also a mental illness, and codependence mental illness, and the only way to be was hyper independent. I think at the time we talked, I was beginning to let go of that, and had a realization and a coming home to my codependent one is always going to be here. 10 years in Al-Anon, years in therapy, becoming a certified coach and 3 different programs, all of that. I thought I'd cured my codependence, but still would like sneak back in the back door. So learning to love that and welcome it was big. Stop making it a problem to solve. It's like my inheritance and I have it. That was part of it. And I'm looking at your face and I'm thinking there's something else that I'm leaving out.
You're muted, honey.
Oh no, it doesn't feel. I was really like remembering. I forgot you said that part actually. So I was like actually like, oh, that was really good too. But that wasn't the thing. Like the part that I remember is that you had this like visualization of 4,000 years ago, like this set of ancestors, and there was like a female ancestor and a male. And I would rather you tell it.
Okay, yeah, I remember all of this. So, visualization, yeah, yeah. I was on an MDMA medicine journey, and I went back, like, in short, went back through 8 or 10,000 years of my mother's lineage, back to a point when there was, oh wow, I'm feeling emotional. Back to a point before patriarchy started to emerge, and we were still in hunter-gatherer societies, and they were matriarchies, meaning that women led and made a lot of the decisions. And that there's 3 ancestors that stand out. There was a man and a woman, and then a non-binary shamanistic person. And oh yeah, and so the wise women knew what was coming, right? They were moving north into the cold, and I blame people moving to places where it is cold and unhospitable for the reason patriarchy has emerged. It's not based on anything at all other than my own thoughts and visions. But if winter is coming, like that's a big like, save the children sort of like warning cry that people can use to seize power, and that's a conversation for another day. Mm-hmm. But these wise women knew what was coming, and so what they did was they and what was coming was 10,000 years of patriarchy, and what they did was they took the seed, the spark of feminine sexual energy, and they turned it into song. And then they also they hid it behind codependency. And that's like the birth of codependency. It was such a big smokescreen that in sort of the male female relating, that men couldn't wiggle their way through to get this spark and destroy it, as they're like suppressing the feminine spirit through violence and rape and forced marriage and all the rest of that over thousands of years. Like they would get entrapped in this like snare of codependency and wouldn't be able to get to that spark underneath. And then throughout time, some people, women, non-binary folks, were able to find this. But the part, in at least in this vision, was that it couldn't be unlocked by a woman alone. You needed both masculine and feminine energy to unlock it. And in my vision, I was invited to unlock it and then get this spark and then go back through my lineage and give it back. I never thought that my own healing could come about through going back through my lineage and healing my ancestors. I think this relates to what I said at the beginning of the podcast, where I said that my time database table has been deleted, and going back and like communing with an ancestor from 3,000 years ago and doing something that's going to benefit me today seems completely normal. And I've been doing a lot of that since.
Since
Peter,
what though? What were you going to say? You've been doing a lot of that since.
period. I think he's saying since
Oh,
then.
since then. Oh.
Since, a lot of that since then.
Peter Levine says when we heal our nervous systems, which I would group attachment and codependency all I mean, I think it's all the same thing, but he says we're healing 7 generations ahead and 7 generations behind us. I think a lot of other people have said something similar. And a lot of us, I think, have this idea that we have to do it here first and then it goes out. And I think what I hear you saying is something about going back actually brought it forward. And
exactly.
I like the dynamic nature of that.
It makes a lot of sense to me right now. Me 3 years ago, like, it wouldn't make any sense at all.
When I do LSD, it's like my left and right sides of my brain melt together and like move and flow with each other. And there is like I'm like this experience of like complete non-duality. And when I feel into Jason, that's the experience it's like when I said at the beginning, like everywhere, everything, everywhere, all at once. Like and a story I have with a little bit of like downloading to go with that, like, is that the irony, the paradox of our trauma is that one timeline is that we create more heart-centered humans that their left and right sides are like fully integrated, and there's a experience of non-duality outside of linear time. And that's a way of being. And so when I met Jason, I already had gotten this download, and I had a couple experiences of it on medicine, and like maybe a couple without medicine, but just very like moments. And I experienced Jason as in that space as their state of being. And while I know you use both pronouns, like energetically, I definitely experience you as a they. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm saying all that to say that I think that, one, I always hope to work with healers who are experiencing something that I'm not yet, right? But that I desire or feel called or attracted to experience. And then 2, I lost 2. But
Jason, do you identify as they?
I use both he and they pronouns, he, him, they, them pronouns. And on the spectrum of male to female, like more towards non-binary than male. And I still use he pronouns because as I move through the world, I so easily pass as a cisgender man, and I have all the privilege that is afforded a cisgender man, and feel it'd be inauthentic for me without changing my appearance quite drastically to not use he, him pronouns, because I'm getting all the privilege for passing as cisgender. I think that what we're talking about, gender and sexuality, I identify as polyamorous, solo poly, relationship anarchy, kinky, and pansexual. If you know what those words mean, you know what those words mean. And I think that has something to do with the feedback that I get. Folks come to me, and often female-bodied folks, and they say things like, I feel so safe around you. People sometimes read me either as non-binary or as a gay man. And then as they get to know me better, they're like, why are you talking about having sex with a woman? And then they're like, oh, you just kind of just flow both ways, always. And feedback from others about that and the impact that me just being with people has been one of the greatest influencers in me choosing what I'm going to do with my time in my life.
I remember the second thing is like, all of that is why I feel safe with you, because it's actually the fact that I can feel this way that your beingness can be with my masculine and my feminine in a way of whatever is there in that moment, and even beyond what we would call the masculine and feminine. Like there's just, and holding that energetic space allows me to expand into that space.
I like hearing your story from you because I've heard Lauren reflect on that medicine journey and what it meant to her. There's like a very ongoing theme in the podcast around this idea of this archetype of this divine love that is unconditional and committed no matter what, and sees the highest version and accepts all things, and you constantly also facing into the shadow of all of that, and how unhelpful it can be to think about things that way. And I think Lauren and I, for all of our brilliance in many areas of our lives, I think this is for both of us an area of constant learning and curiosity and struggle and suffering. And so she heard something in what you said about like codependency being good almost. And like, and I can experience myself like the high side of all of that, think about it almost like on a persona type level. Damn right. Like I can love real good. And when I'm actually not abandoning myself, I think it's one of my essence qualities and a real gift. Unfortunately, I abandon myself quite a bit in the mess of those things, or or whatever. I'm on some kind of learning curve around that. But interesting to hear this reflection of like, maybe we're all codependent all the time anyway. And it's just gradients. It helps me with as a type 8 of like all or nothing. Cause I'll just be like, fine, it's all about me now. Fuck you. Like, there's just having more nuance around what does this all look like? And I feel like that's what you're actually living for and modeling in your sexuality. So, just gray and some nuance. And, there's something about who you are that I think is invitational around a little less hard lines around how we think about these things and these words and what they mean and their definitions and all of that.
Thank you. And you touched on shadow, and I think that might be part of my attraction, as well as the work I've done with shadow around giving and receiving pain, power exchange, tools from play from the BDSM community. 3 nights ago, I was just over there in my living room on the floor, and my lover Anna has been in town for a few days, and I was naked, tied up in rope, crying my eyes out as she's like using her long nails to like claw some of the like most tender parts of my body where I hold a lot of trauma, like screaming, crying, tears, the whole thing, harder than I've cried in 9 years. She's over there having her own experience, like enjoying doing a good job of giving pain and like moving my body around with it being in rope and compressing and uncompressing it, and still being with me and like having power, like me giving and her holding power over my body, and then doing work with me in that space. And it was delightful. And it was such a huge movement for me. And I passed out afterwards. And most of the time in those situations, I'm on the other side, the one who is giving pain or taking power or playing. And there's so much healing that I've experienced in myself and others, and people reporting back to me healing that can happen when two things are at play that I like to play with. One is giving away power to someone else. It's almost like being on medicine of some kind without taking medicine. Parts of the brain are turned
surrender.
off.
Yeah.
It's surrender. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then increasing intensity that it brings up things that the body's storing. That's one. And the second one is then playing with sexual energy. So in that state, playing with sexual energy. And it could be like anticipation or erotic energy or sexual stimulation, like raising up that sexual energy as like a resource to be tapped and used as fuel for healing.
Yeah, that's next level for me. Like that's a new invitation, but especially then adding BDSM. But I think I guess I want to stamp it. I just think like it's like there's this whole, like I guess when I think about BDSM in the past and these things, it would be like a turn on or a kink, which I'm sure, it can totally be that. But this whole like, I think that you were talking about it. It just has come up so much. The book, I'm reading Urban Tantra. Is that what it's called? Mm-hmm. And I've heard from a few other people like that their experiences. And when I think about even codependency for me, it was like giving away my power all the time. Mm-hmm. Now, there's to your point, surrender is actually really something that comes pretty easily for me. And, it makes sense. Like, but to be in that position always, right? There's like an imbalance. And then my turn on right now is like my turn on and is to be empowered, to be the one. Mm-hmm. And then there's interdependence, which I make up is the dance of those two things all the time, but is impossible if you hold power definitively, and is impossible if you surrender definitively.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm thinking a lot about somatic experiencing and how, like in session with a client, some sensation will come. And the first thought is like that it's bad or unpleasant or they don't like it. Like even earlier today, there was a deep emptiness in the chest. And the first thing was like, is that good or bad? And they're like, bad. This is scary. And then we went into it a little bit and they're like, oh, and it was really good. And it was just like, they're just our stories and definitions about what's good and
how we label sensations. Yeah.
Either way, it's like just on the edges of our like capacity, I guess. And in as far as like somatic experiencing and the healing that comes with that modality, that's what that's about. It's about, can you be on the edge and can you experience the sensations and have your observer on? And there is something in SE around being a witness in it. There's a container that's held. You're not on your own with somebody. It doesn't sound that different from what you're talking about, I guess, is what I'm noticing.
It's not that different at all. Yeah. It sounds salacious from the outside, but once you get into it, it's not that different from what you're describing.
And I think like really consciously leaning into sexual energy as a transformational healing energy is this like wonderful, curious layer. But even
it's so much fun.
Right?
So much fun. I don't like to do anything that isn't fun. And that's kind of, go.
But what Lauren said around like, oh, it's just like a kink. I'm like, but that's a whole thing too. Like, have you read the book Existential Kink?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I want to
probably read that one, but it's basically the idea. It's shadow work, and it's like, okay, in a sex club, this is okay, but then there's so many things that we're doing where we might be like in conscious leadership language, unconsciously committed to pain in some way, but we just societally haven't blessed that as a normal thing or a thing that's okay. And when you just own, no, I kind of like this, then you're in a completely different place of agency. Even if it's, you know, like I've had these relationships with these highs and lows and like anxious and avoidant swings and just like fights and stuff. Well, less fights now, finally fights. Mostly it was like pretty avoidant stuff, but like, and I'm like, maybe I like this. Like, and just owning, okay, maybe I like it like this. Maybe a big part of me likes these big old fucking swings and how big this all is and intense. And like, that's a different place from which to be with all of it. I had that thought. And my final thought was there's this woman, I joke, just like a giggly squad jokes. I say I read it in the New York Times, which means I saw it on TikTok. There's a woman on TikTok. There's a woman I read in the New York Times who has been doing all of these posts around divine feminine and masculine and these polarities and how to show up in your relationship, depending on what outcomes you want. And a lot of it seems almost counterintuitive. But I think she's really onto something. And it's sort of like what you just said, Lauren, around, well, it's easy to be codependent and at the effect of everything. And it's easy to surrender for the same reasons, like those same personas in us, I will say, that can surrender to stuff because we're so used to like giving power away almost. Really stepping into, no, I'm in charge of this. And holding that, like, not like that there's really something that changes how everyone around you acts and shows up when you're like, no, I'm in my power around this. And I know that this is what I deserve, what I want, how this is going to go, how you should see me because I see myself that way. There's this whole other thing happening that maybe is kind of counter to this idea of like this unconditional maternal love that's just, you know, whatever, like this other thing that I think we touch into sometimes, Lauren, of like this unconditional, I will love you no matter what, and I will accept, blah, 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 like whatever that all can go to and look like at times. So I don't know. I'm following that.
Well, the thing is like even from just an atomic perspective, there's two poles. There's two energies that are magnetizing all the time. Like, to me, the evolution is just, can we be with all of it? You know, but then this other complexity that I feel like navigating is there's like this invitation to be with all of it while also being in a physical body in a third dimensional reality with other physical bodies and third dimensional realities with like true laws of matter and gravity and, you know, and these other things. And just like, and I'm saying that to say like, there's a place in non-duality where everything goes. And also at that on the same wavelength, everything goes and everything's okay. So if I like hurt you, or if, you know, whatever I do, there's a place in non-duality where I could find acceptance and allowance for that. But then there's like real true experiences in the physical body, in matter. There's impact and there's intention. And that's where interdependence lies, right? Is like, can we hold non-duality while also being interdependent and honoring like the agreements, the consent, the experiences, the needs of all of those that we are connected and we share space with. And that feels like an invitation and a paradox at the same time.
Invitation and paradox at the same time.
You can respond to any or none of all the things we just said.
Oh, just sitting here, letting it all swirl around. There's been a theme of non-duality in my life right now. I'm doing work with a trauma therapist, and it's really turning me upside down because they are using a bunch of tools that I've never heard of, and I thought I knew all the tools, and it's like I'm starting over. It's all a little bit different, and they said something recently, which was, life doesn't need us.
Mm.
Life doesn't need us. It's really impactful to me. And Lauren, I see it as a both and. Both in that non-dualistic space, yeah, and there is impact. You can hold them both. I guess I'm quoting my therapist again here. Like if those are two sides of a coin, they would say, well, like, and what is the space without the coin? So the both and could be two sides of the coin, and also the emptiness with the coin. And what if there was no coin?
Yeah.
That's an edge of learning for me right now. Everything around non-duality. And I have no idea how doing work on non-duality is going to like solve my trauma triggers in my life, but I'm just trusting into that. And some other things that are just popping from what all of you said was that there is a lot of healing available to us by making friends with our sexual energy, making friends with our body, not making our bodies wrong, by cultivating a sexual experience with ourselves, with others, and really seeing sexual energy as a way to heal. There are so many people out there doing amazing healing work that goes unnoticed and undocumented and unstudied because the work they're doing is illegal in this country. And if there's any one thing that my work as an artist and all the other things that I do with individuals and groups of people, if there's one thing that would just make me ecstatic that would happen, would be that folks get more comfortable with their own sexuality, that they use their sexual energy, that they get comfortable with their gender, that people develop a language that we're able to use in more mainstream places about our bodies and pleasure and desire and sex, and see it not as something wrong or something to be managed or something we're addicted to, but instead see it as a gift that we can use for healing, like breath.
So it feels like you shared all your codes, like without saying they were your codes. And then now it feels like you're starting to talk about the collective. Like that's an invitation to the collective healing.
I heard you with the outline 30 minutes ago. I got you.
Oh, so you've been following that on purpose? I thought it was just organically going like that.
It's both, Lauren. It's both and. Have you been listening? It's both and.
But is there anything else around around collective healing that you feel really passionate about, or?
That's a big one. And I have some more cheat codes I can share after we talk about this. If it's okay if we don't go in order. But there was a time in the United States when like something like 3 or 5% of the population was left-handed, and those people were seen as like embodying the devil, and their hands were tied behind their back, and they were hit with rulers and all the rest of these things. And then at some point someone said, well, hey, maybe people are just sometimes left-handed. And and then it was okay to be left-handed, and these men in charge of churches weren't in charge of the handedness of folks as they're learning to write. And it came to pass that something like 13 or 17% of people in the United States are actually left-handed. And when I think about gender, and I think about civilizations that have escaped patriarchy and Western civilization, and when we go back, 10,000 years plus, and we look at gender, binary gender is something that was completely made up. It's not natural, right? Like even with the most even with the lowest statistics that I found about intersex births, it's still like 1%. Is that 1%? I don't know. It's a percentage, maybe as much as 1% of all births are in intersex births. You don't know unless you do a DNA test, chromosome test, and when the person reaches puberty. What's really important to me about Healing Collective is getting to that 17% or 20% or 8% of us that are non-binary, that don't meet the accepted idea of masculinity and femininity. That like even over the last 300 years in this country, we've had a spectrum of gender. We've had tomboys and girly boys and like all these other names that we've had for folks that implies that there's always been a gender spectrum. And that's just pointing to the truth that there's more than two genders when it comes to humans. And most Aboriginal Indigenous populations have more than two genders. And so I would love
classic art. Isn't there just a lot more flexibility around gender? Like,
yes. Yeah.
Wait, what'd you say? Classic art?
Yeah, like Greco-Roman art and like so many. I mean, just like art, like from an art history perspective, I think there's a lot more flexibility. There's
a lot in history that we have recorded. I imagine a lot more in history that we haven't recorded. And a healing for the collective, a wish, a want I have, something that I like to think I'm contributing to, is shining a light on how many people don't identify as strictly masculine and feminine, and how even like the language that we use of masculine and feminine and polarities and two sides of a coin, how all of that has come from binary gender definitions and just the whole system that is in place. Even if we got rid of every person who is transphobic in the country, there would still be a system that benefits people who are cisgender more. So
I was just talking with somebody about, so I definitely identified, I guess, as a tomboy when I was young, and always like dressed more masculine. Now I also had like my body developed really fast and I got a lot of attention that I was very uncomfortable with when I was a young age. So part of it was like an armor and like a way to hide a little bit. So it's a little confusing for me. Like, I don't really know what my aim all the way was then, if I was just like trying to avoid certain types of attention. But I had a conversation with someone where I was like, you ever see that TV show Last Man on Earth? No. It's basically like everyone dies except for one guy, at least for the first part of the first season. So he's just alone. It's like, what would you do if there's nobody else? Like no one you had to be anybody for, if all of the ideas.
I think I've asked someone that question like 3 times this week. Like it's come up a lot. Yeah. Like, because keep going.
Well, I just was like, what I would wear if there was nobody else and it was just me. I feel like I know what that is. And it's not hyper feminine. And
mine is a unicorn onesie.
Right. Oh, maybe we did talk about it was on the pod. We talked a little bit about this. And I was like, I feel like I would be wearing like vintage French workwear, like very utilitarian, certain types of like density of fabrics. I mean, that's a whole thing for me, like how things feel, but like, but I do notice, like, I've never really considered, like, I haven't really questioned identifying as like, a woman, as she, but I can see how in different atmospheres, how much like where I want to go with how I'm showing up changes quite a bit, or in different people's presence, or in different states of nervous system regulation, or things like that, like how differently I notice having a desire to show up as far as like outward gender signals.
Well, it goes back to the polarities. Like there are certain women that this uber masculine kind of like consumptive energy dominant comes on. for me. And then like men, like quite certain men that I'm go really submissive, just energetically in their presence.
Yeah.
And then other men that I'm like, it's more like a duel, like can't fuck with me kind of. It doesn't feel like power over, but it just feels like confident, like evil playing field. And it just feels like that's why, to some extent
power is a part of gender and how you feel like those roles are showing up. Is that true? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying like the energetic polarities. That's what I want to take like words off of it. Like, when you take two magnets and you do the side that they repel, and then like the energy's like this, right? And then it attracts, but then there's like energy that's like this. And then there's energy that's like this, and like, or energy that's like that. Like, and I'm saying that like, if I like say there's like someone, like certain men, I go like this, and certain women, I go like this. Like there's just like, I feel this like super strong polarity in that. And my preference right now, and what is actually the hardest polarity for me to pull on, is like a really feminine erotic, what I think we would maybe share like definition. I don't know what else to call it, but it's like the masculine over energy and the surrender energy are like very common. And it's like, now I want to feel this like erotic creative, I guess it's just like full creative something. But anyways, I just experience it as these energetic polarities. But then what I get overwhelmed a little bit is like how everything has to have an identity and a name, like every single time, and it's like, well, like, I don't know, because I can be all those things all the time. It's like, it doesn't make sense to me to choose one, to be like, I'm this or I'm that. It's just, I am all of it.
Once gender was described to me not as a line, but as a circle. And then once you draw the circle, then you turn it into a 3D sphere. And I think the line, when you go from a line to a circle, you add in the dimension of location. Where are you? Who are you relating with? And when you turn into a sphere, you add the dimension of time. It could be time of day, time of life, season you're in. And then, Lauren, you don't have to locate yourself like on a line somewhere between masculine and feminine. You can locate yourself at anywhere in that 360 degree sphere.
And then it would like, but in that metaphor, like even non-binary is like limiting as a phrase.
Non-binary is like a catch-all for,
It's like, I'm everywhere. I'm everything everywhere all at once, locating myself in a moment as such, Yeah.
I like to think of it as like doing work. Like, I'm going to pull a tool that both of you know, but people listening might not. It's called the 4 Ways of Being, which draws from like the Peruvian medicine wheel with these different categories. And it's like different categories you can be in, and you can flow in between them. There's like the category of something's happening to me, then the category of I'm doing things in the world, I'm making my own way, and then there's surrender and the surrendered state, then there's this ASME state. And there are times, oh my God, my brain forgot what we were talking about.
I think it was about
the sphere, right?
Sphere, non-binary being limiting.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so
ASME, is that where you're going?
Yeah, thank you. My brain sometimes just fades off. So the non-binary part is about doing, all of us doing our own work on our own gender. So we could just say, I'm at the effective gender. I was born with the genitalia that I was born with. I was socialized in the way that I was socialized, and I'm just me. I'm stuck. That to me is being at the effect of gender and socialization. If you actually step into your power and do your work and say, well, what does gender feel like to me? How am I in different places and different times with different people? How was my gender when I was growing up? How is my gender at work? If you actually do all of your work, then you can move along through. And in that area, all the definitions, Lauren, you're referring to of gender and identity and all that, that's helpful there for folks who are in the by me energy to defining and doing all that head work to figure out where they're at. And then there's surrender. And then there's like, it probably doesn't matter on the other side. I think where folks get in trouble though, is where they go from like being at the effect of my gender, I was born this way, and they just jump to like, oh, gender doesn't matter. And they don't do the work in the middle. I call that spiritual bypassing. That's like my definition of spiritual bypassing. If you go from the world is happening to me, I'm at the effect of, I'm in victim, and you just jump all the way to like as me. Like gender doesn't exist, but you don't actually do your own work.
Yeah, that comes up for me with race all the time. It's like,
with race,
we're all the same color. It's pretend, it's this, it's whatever. And it also has to do with location, right? And like in the time and space we're in the history of experience, like there are identifying factors, privileges, ways of being that show up because we did make this up. And what does it look like to take responsibility for that in this time?
What does doing your work around gender look like to you?
I think it looks like doing your work around any identity. Looking at the way people do work around race, I think is really great. Like, who are your ancestors, etc. for race. So it would be learning about how gender plays out in our country. Like, how were you socialized? What things were you allowed to do and not allowed to do? What types of clothes were options for you to wear? What did you actually want to wear? What did gender look like in societies before the concept of binary gender was inserted into it? Like educating yourself so that you know what gender is and you feel what gender possibilities are and what gender is all about. Because I mean, gender is made up. Right? Gender like sex, gender like race, it's made up. Right? Like race is completely made. If you go look, I mean, Lauren, I'm sure you've done the work, the 1300s, some Frenchmen like invented race. Ethnicity is a thing, right? That's where your ancestors came from, but race is made up. Gender also is, in my opinion, a construct that we use. But because a construct has power, there are
story.
things.
It's a story that creates.
Yeah, it's a story that creates. But like as someone who easily passes as a man, I can put on a suit and tie, and I can walk. And also because I'm white and tall, I can walk into any room in any building on the planet, and no one's going to like stop me because I'm a white man in a suit. I've had that experience once I was in Cuba. I walked into like the private area of a club, and the 4 people I was with like couldn't get through, and I didn't notice till like 5 minutes later, and they're not with me. I was like, what's wrong? It's like, well, you were dressed like that. So knowing what the system that I'm living in, what impact my gender and how I appear affects. Like I've whenever I go out walking someplace, not in California, people stop at crosswalks in California, but in other states, they don't stop. And whenever I'm walking with a tall, attractive blonde woman, we just walk right into the street. And I'm like, we are going to get hit. We're going to get hit because I'm going to get hit. My experience is like people are going to try and run me over looking like I do. But if I'm walking with an attractive woman, cars stop. So gender work might be like noticing like what unearned privilege do I have because of my gender, and in what ways am I oppressed, and what ways are the table stacked against me because of my gender.
And I want to add, I think that then because those stories have so much power, the other layer of work is to identify when you're in fear consciousness or victim consciousness because of one of the stories that you hold around gender, and also that it's creating some kind of like impact or aversion, right, in someone else, because that's like an opportunity to look at how you've marginalized yourself or how you've cut off some part of the experience of gender or sexuality in your own experience. So then that next layer of tools, right, that we know from conscious leadership is just like where am I and what is there to learn from where I am, and how can I integrate, allow, accept that part.
And through this lens, it allows me to have the both and.
Exactly.
I can
And
be
have more interdependence, because I likely am willing to see or experience multiple truths.
I wasn't tracking that. That's a realization in this moment. Thank you. Yeah.
Which is ultimately the both and, right? It's like, if I can take my aversion or my strong denial of who you are, and then look over here and find the way that I'm denying that part of myself, I expand and then bring it forward and love it. It's like I can expand my own self-acceptance, and then likely, or in my experience, like when I go back over there, that aversion is not there. And in fact, I can empathize. I can, bring you into my experience in a way that I couldn't before.
Mm. Yeah.
You said you had some cheat codes.
Oh, I have more cheat codes. Okay. Number one cheat code for unlimited creativity all the time is breathe, move, play. Before you do anything that you want creativity at, it could be painting, it could be doing your calendar, it could be cleaning the house, it could be sex. Don't start with the thing that you want to do. Start by breathing. Just notice that you're breathing. You can do a breathing activity of any kind. I have tons written. You can ask me, or just look up breathing activities. And then you move into play, some sort of movement. Move. You move into movement. After done breathing, move your body in some way. Could be fear melters from Hendrix. It could be dance. It could be going for a walk. Just move your body. And then play. And play could be like trying it for the first time and doing it wrong, like intentionally doing it wrong the first time. It could be anything that feels a little bit playful and not serious. I often tell people, if you're stuck with your creative project, don't put it on your calendar and beat yourself up if you don't do it. Instead, put 30-minute dance party on your calendar and leave 1 hour or 2 hours unscheduled right behind it. And just do your dance party where you happen to do your creative work. Guaranteed, every time after you're done with the dance party, like something is going to come out of you.
You're here to hear. Dance party to get your chores done.
Exactly.
I can attest to this works because I have this devotional practice now, and I've added the breath work that we're doing. And on the days that I like play music and do the breath, and it's like the whole day actually feels more like play and ease and flow. Just
I would
because
say parenting also feels better with music. I do it
parenting, you said?
Parenting. I do a thing with the kids of they get a drop off song, so they get to pick whatever song they want when I drop them off for school, and we play it really loud on the way to drop them off. And they both really like rock music and loud stuff or whatever, and so they pick some rager and 7:30 in the morning or whatever, and we like let it play out. There's like busy drop off, and they just get their favorite song, and they're like they just got to sing their favorite song as the first thing before they go walk into school for the day. And I feel like that changes the tone of the day. It's usually a song that I do not want to hear, but I'll play along for 5 minutes. And then same at home. Like it's a guaranteed when I put the Wonder Boom on and I put some loud thing that I know they like, and we just start being silly and dancing. It's like a big kind of silly joke thing, but I'll do some embarrassing mom singing or dancing or something like that. It's like a pretty guaranteed way to loosen up whatever's going on and shift the energy.
Love it.
Speaking of which, I got to shift their energies from the television and hanging out with my mom into their beds.
I just want to close with some appreciation. Let me just feel into it. It's like feels so simple, but I just so appreciate who you are and the angle in that sphere, like the angles that you speak from and that you show me so I can have new angles and new places on the sphere. So thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Something I appreciate is like, I feel like we keep learning new things for and with each other. And then, but from the get-go, when I first met you, I was like, I just felt like you held mastery in a lot of like parallel areas. Like I was like Hendrix, race, sex. Like there's just certain stuff I felt you were showing up in a state of mastery, and also like we're the really beginner's mind around, and I'm here to learn and whatever. And so I just really appreciate that. I noticed trusting you around what you talk about. Like I think you have a thoroughness of like mastery on the things that you've looked into.
Feels so good and true. It's like it's vibrating in my like chest right here. Mastery and beginner's mind. That is true. And it's one of the gifts of like my brain. Like I forget things until I'm in the middle of it, and I'm like, oh, I actually am really good at this. So that's
Lesson forgetting and remembering.
This has been fun.
Thank
you for the invitation and bringing the beautiful energy.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We welcome your feedback. You can email us at healingcollectivepod@gmail.com. Our website is thehealingcollectivepodcast.com, at Healing Podcast on Twitter, at Healing Collective Podcast on Instagram. Special thanks to Ethan Luck, who produces. You can find him at Ethan Luck on all platforms.